This is Eagle Freedom Presents Showtime.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's your host, Deston Rogers.
And welcome to another edition of Eagle Freedom Presents. I am your host, Deston Rogers. Thank you very much for joining me. Here at Eagle Freedom Presents, we bring stories to life with guests who exemplify our mantra of rise, inspire, and overcome. On today's show, we have a first. We have our first couple joining us today. Individually, their stories are amazing. You're going to want to just stay close to your listening device for this interview. Individually, they have gone through some unsurmountable challenges in their life, but together they found a unique bond, and we're going to talk about that as well. Would you please welcome to the show Rose and AJ Green? Hello, Rose and AJ.
Hi.
How you doing?
Thanks for having us on.
Oh, well, thank you both for joining me. I'm glad that you guys are able to join us. I know we've had a chance to catch up a while back and get to know each other a little bit. And I think individually, your stories are just truly, truly amazing about what you've had to overcome in your life. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to kind of have some fun with this. Normally, I have a ton of questions already lined up, but this is one of those unique interviews in that we're just going to go from our conversation that we have here today. So Rose, why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and some of the backgrounds and some of the struggles that you've had to go through in your life?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Southern California. My mom is an immigrant from Mexico City, and my dad's from El Paso, Texas. So we have Hispanic in the background with a bunch of other races through my dad.
So tell us about your upbringing. Tell us about the young life of Rose.
The young life of Rose. So let's see. I'm the oldest of four, and around kindergarten age, my parents separated after having an abusive relationship behind closed doors. I'm the oldest, so I kind of paid attention to everything that was going on. I witnessed physical abuse, and I also heard it through behind closed doors. So at around 5 or 6, I'm going to guess 5, my mom during Christmas picked me up with a van full of our stuff. She had made friends with someone who she met at an English night school. She was trying to perfect her English, I guess, and he helped her get away from the abusive relationship.
So with the abusive relationship at a young age, 5 years old, I can imagine that is something that at 5 years old, you're at the age where you start to really retain a lot of memory of the things that have happened in the past. Has that impacted you going through your life today?
Oh, most definitely. It consciously, it allowed me to pay attention to the red flags of what I didn't want in my life with a partner, with a family dynamic. But unfortunately, subconsciously, that's all I attracted because I hadn't gone to counseling, and I hadn't healed internally from those wounds. Mm-hmm.
Once you guys got in the van, where did you guys go from there? What did life look like after that?
We went to my grandmother's house, my mom's mom, and we stayed there for a while. And then I remember we drove somewhere. I'm guessing it's the San Fernando Valley because we were in LA County at the time. So we had an apartment, but it was unfurnished. I remember white walls or pink walls. I don't know. It's so long ago, but I remember us sitting in the living room. Some of us were crying. My mom was talking to her friend, and he was counseling her. And that's pretty much it from that evening. Things later got better, where we had furniture. Later I found out my mom went on welfare, and so, she needed assistance with groceries and stuff that we needed. We kept going to school, which was also challenging because you know how kids are when you don't have certain things. They're always making fun of you, even though they're not any better than you are because you're living in the same neighborhood, but you don't know that stuff when you're a kid.
Your mom's in a healthier relationship at this point?
At this point, yes, it seems so, but later I found out that he was also married and separated. He had two kids, and I don't know. From what I remember, he was there part-time. He later helped us move to another little house where was also in the San Fernando Valley, but it was closer to where he worked. He worked for the railroad. Um, I don't know what you call it, but it's the railroad track company in San Fernando. And so it was close to his job. So we would see him almost every day. And then, things got better from there. But things weren't always perfect. There was always something. Noticed looking back now, I remember my mom going through depression. And I remember a lot of times, which was weird because in the beginning, of my childhood, my mom would have a habit of always opening up the windows and the curtains and airing out the house and housekeeping and stuff like that. The house was always clean and in order, but I remember the curtains being drawn, so it was really dark. So I think she was going through depression. She wanted to get out of the LA County area, so we ended up moving to Azusa, Hacienda Heights kind of area. And we were there, I'll never forget, this was in like La Puente area. It was on Orange Avenue and Valley, around that neighborhood, where we had a place. And that was the last we ever saw of my stepdad. He was from Argentina. And it turns out that he did leave the wife he was separated from, but he left with someone else.
So your mom obviously knew, or did she not know that he was married?
No, she knew he was married. Yeah, because when they met at night school, they got to talking and stuff. So they were both married. They were both going through a separation. She needed help. He helped her. And I guess whatever he needed help with, she helped him. I was like a freshman in high school now, end of junior high, high school at this point.
And how was it once he left? So he's out of the picture now, and
Yeah,
now it's your mom and just you and your siblings now, and
right.
now you're entering into high school. So how is this all transitioning? How is this all affecting you? Of all the past drama that you've had to deal with in your life, how is that affecting you as far as school goes now that you're in high school?
Well, it's amazing how God gave me the ability to compartmentalize things because being the oldest, um, I had to, like, I wouldn't think about myself. I would think about my mom. As long as my mom was happy, everything was okay. I would just focus on, I guess, the needs of the family versus my own.
Is that because of the way that you were raised, because of the stuff that you had gone through, that you kind of just felt like, as maybe because if I remember correctly, you were the oldest sibling. So did you
Right.
feel that you kind of had a responsibility to maybe pick up some load and think more about them than you were thinking about yourself?
I think so, especially with the personality my mom has. She's the kind of person that would complain about something, but she wouldn't do anything about it to change it. And that was the difference between her and I, is that I would suggest, like to do something about it. Like for example, we went out once out to dinner to El Torito, and she complained about the order wasn't, they didn't bring back the dish she ordered, for example. So I told her, well, let the waitress know. And then she goes, no, that's okay. I'll just deal with it. But then she'd continue to complain. So I picked up in the fact that if you want things done your way or the right way, you have to be the one to speak up for yourself. And that's just something that I picked up because I was really shy at that stage prior to noticing how my mom handled things. And I didn't like her complaining without making a change. It irritated me. And so I started getting the bull by the horns and saying, well, no, this isn't how you like it. And then, my mom started noticing some changes. So she actually allowed me in a lot of areas to take the lead in situations. Being 11 or I don't know, 10 to 12 years old is when I started doing all this. So for school, I dealt with what I had to deal with at school, with some of the bullying and stuff like that. But in reality, I really kept to myself.
You just touched
Um,
on something that I think we need to talk about, and that is
Sure.
because it's so prominent today, and that is you talked about the bullying part about. Tell us a little bit about that. You said you were pretty much to yourself, but there was some of that bullying going on. What, do you know what the cause of that? Why they were bullying you?
Oh, because I wasn't wearing the clothes that were in style at the time. My mom would sew. So sometimes she would make my clothes, especially in elementary school. So there was a lot of that. So kids were always making fun of my clothes. Um, but when I was in high school, I had told my mom that I didn't want her really making my clothes anymore because I wanted to fit in. Um, so, she did her best. There were times where she did make some of my blouses, and I would ask her to, show me how to knit because I would make sweater vests and stuff like that and pair them up. But kids, especially if they're into the fashion part of it and they are always wearing what's in style and you're not, you're the one who gets targeted.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So you've gone through what you went through as a kid, the abuse that your mom took, um, and then she meets this stepdad who eventually leaves the picture. You're learning to take control, basically, of situations. How does all of that affect you as far as relationships goes?
Um, it did affect me a lot. Before I graduated high school, my mom was taking us to this church in El Monte. I played the guitar, so I joined the choir. And then my mom ends up meeting someone who she thought she would pair him up with me. Mind you, I'm still a kid. I'm like, what, 14, 13 years old at this point, and he did not appeal to me whatsoever. And I said, "No, mom, that's more your cup of tea." Is what I had told her, because he was real studious looking and real tall, thin, nerdy kind of, and that wasn't what I was interested in. So, with all that said, they actually got involved. She was 15 years older, or still is 15 years older than him, because they're still together. So I ended up learning some other stuff. So at this point, now we have another stepfather who can be my uncle because he's not that far off in age from me. And he's starting to, you know, put in some rules and some stuff that I had difficulty adjusting to. But I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from him, and I saw the dynamics with my mom. And he wasn't abusive physically, but he likes to play head games. So now we're dealing with a different type of abuse on top of what I've already experienced. So growing up with that dynamic before I graduated from high school was interesting because he didn't like me. He didn't like me because I didn't keep my opinions to myself. At this point, I would speak my mind. When things aren't just, that's where I basically just, headstrong. And that helped out later in life with work, at this job that I still have, where I became a union steward. So I had the characteristics of fighting for others.
Mm. Yeah, well, you had to. I mean, it's something that you had to learn young in your life that you really needed to stick up for yourself. So, are you at this point, you're not with anybody, you're not involved in any relationships, you're just going through life the best you can at this point?
Almost. I mean, there was an incident in high school where I had my first high school boyfriend, and I sneaked out of the house to see him against my mom's, permission and what have you. And long story short, turns out that I ended up getting pregnant, and my mom made up this big old story with the doctor to convince me to have an abortion, even though I didn't want to. Later on, I find out that what the story that they came up with, that there was some kind of disease that he gave me, was not true. And they basically lied to me so I can consent for the abortion. Um, so there are a lot of tears when it comes to the relationship, a lot of trust issues and stuff like that. So then, we go back to this church. I'm no longer seeing the high school boyfriend. And, we keep going to church and whatever, but we went to some choir contests and stuff like that. And she ends up meeting this older gentleman. And I say older because he's what, 7 years older than me. I'm like 15, 16 at this point. So she actually arranged for us to be together. And next thing you know, I'm out of the house living with this man, this grown man, and that's just the way it ended. So now I'm dealing with my own relationship with a person who I didn't want to be with. And I had no, I mean, we're living here in California. I look back now and it's like, I don't even know why I didn't go to anybody. I guess I was happy of not being in the house, maybe. It was a lot, but I graduated midterm from high school, went to trade school, so I'm not a high school dropout of any kind. Um, he was, he turned out to be abusive later.
Once it started getting abusive in your own relationship, and I guess this is where I I'm thinking that you would have gone back in time to when your mom was going through, the abusive relationship with your dad at that time, and now that's coming kind of catching up to you in your own relationship. How did you deal with the abuse that was going on?
It's really weird. Unless you actually go through something like that, you really don't understand. I know a lot of people, even my husband asks, why do women stay in abusive relationships? And the thing is, you don't really you don't really choose to look behind the veil completely because you believe that the person loves you, right? And because that's something that you lacked. So that's something that you're looking for, right? So then you start making excuses, or you start realizing, well, it's kind of my fault. I shouldn't have done this kind of thing. So you don't really think, or at least I did. I didn't really think about what my mom had gone through in that perspective, in that perspective at that time. It didn't really, I didn't really snap out of it until I had my son, my older son. I had him at almost 19. And there was one night, which was in October. It was October 27th, actually, where his dad was under the influence of something. And he became very argumentative and possessive. And it was evening. I remember Geraldo Rivera being on TV, and I don't even remember the argument, but he did pin me down. He almost forced himself on me. His pupils were super dilated, and he finally stopped, and I realized I need to leave. I tried everything I can. I've tried making a better environment for us. And it's all of his insecurities and all of these things that he has that I need to get away from. And sure enough, I devised a plan and I left the next day. It was not something I was gonna stand for.
Well, I think that's commendable in that you found your breaking point, in that you realize you can no longer be in this situation. So you got out of that situation. What happened after that?
Well, I mean, I did everything I could. I was working, I was taking care of my son. Um, my mom was kind of helping, but she wasn't. It was always under conditions. And as I got older, I did meet someone else, and I thought it was going to be a better situation, but it's not until you really stick to a program. It's like being an alcoholic, and you have to go to AA. When it comes to domestic violence, it's the same thing. Al-Anon actually helped me a lot because Al-Anon is like um, substituting the alcohol word, when you say your prayers and your mantras or whatever with them. And if you just change that word to abusive or abuse, it's the same thing. It really, really helps. So unfortunately, I go through the same thing again with this other person. And this time my mom and her husband, which is the one she met at church 15 years younger than her, they said, nope, we're not going to help you. You need professional help, is basically what I was told. So I had to go to a shelter for battered women. So by doing that, I ended up, because it's mandatory while you're in the shelter, you have to go to daily group therapy and you go to counseling and stuff like that. And it really helped. So I vowed that I was going to go after I got out and got myself back on my feet, that I was going to go to these programs just like AA. And I did. And it's still a hit or miss. There's still a lot of things you have to discover about yourself, about the reason why you attract men like that, or why is it that, they turn out to be abusive and stuff like that. So a lot of things from my childhood started coming up at that point. And then that's when I realized, even though I was aware, that's when I realized that I hadn't healed from that and I needed to go to counseling and heal and forgive. And it took me a while to realize that I also needed to forgive my mom, because I was dealing with the absent father who wasn't there, and then the stepfathers who were there. But then I realized, well, wait a minute, my mom had certain behaviors too that I live with. Like, for example, if she did not agree with you on something or she was upset with you, instead of having a conversation and letting you know where you stand and giving you an opportunity to rectify it or what have you, she would completely give you the cold shoulder and ignore you. And I learned to be a little bit more strong when it comes to my feelings, even though I'm still in tune with them and I get emotional here and there. But I really learned to toughen up when it came to her. So that actually helped me in my workplace, because I encountered a lot of women, older women like that, with authority, who would do that. And it would just bring me back to where I was with my mom. So every time something happened in my present, because I was going to counseling and going to these workshops and groups, that would trigger situations that would happen in my past. Sometimes I would get real aggressive or harsh with my reactions and what have you. But then as I kept continuing with counseling, I realized, wait a minute, this is still something I have to learn. This is what God wants me to learn about my past. That's why it's still happening in my present. And little by little, it just kept getting better.
There's a really traumatic um, incident that happens with your son, correct?
That was the night that he almost forced himself on me. So it was during that month. So what happened was, before that night, he okay, so I had a part-time job, And it was at an agency. I was the receptionist there, and so we would pay a babysitter for me to drop off my son um, for the part-time hours, 4 or 6 hours that I worked during the day. And his dad worked for Albertsons, so he had a night job, excuse me, and he had to sleep during the day. So that was our agreement. Well, one day I headed to work and he didn't want me going to work. He wanted me to stay. And I didn't understand why. He was just frantic. So I don't know if it was the drugs he was doing or the fact that he was cheating on me and I wasn't aware of it, but he was paranoid that I was going to do the same thing. I have no idea. The thing is that he did not want me leaving. And then I'm in the car and he goes, well, no, you're not going to go. Don't take my son and this and that. So I grabbed my son from the car seat and I said, fine, if you want to take care of him here. So I handed him over to him. He's holding him. I'm getting ready to leave. I'm driving a little Datsun stick shift car. So, you can rock the car back and forth. He ends up standing behind the car and I see him through the rearview mirror. And I asked him to move and he wouldn't move. And then I see him putting my son on the ground for me to run him over. That was the day that I just I can't even describe the feeling. It's like something just snapped in me internally and I was just like dead inside. Emotionally, I had no emotions. All I knew was I had to leave. This is getting out of control. And I didn't understand why he would do that. And then about a few days or a week later, then that's when that incident happened where he tried to force himself on me. Yeah.
So wow, that's just I don't think anybody can really, like you said, I don't even think you can really put into words how your expression, how you felt. You just kind of went dead
Mhm.
in the moment, and I don't know how anybody would really react to that type of a situation where he wanting you to stay home so much that he's
Right.
basically laying your child down on the ground um,
Mhm.
for you to make a decision, right? So you end up
Right.
obviously doing the right thing, and that is eventually ended up leaving the situation. I'd like to jump in real quick with AJ at this point because I want to touch on this and I want to bring you back together so we can talk about your relationship together. So, AJ, I know you've got quite a story as well. Growing up in Compton, you retired with the Postal Service, so kind of like the same thing we talked about, Rose. Before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your upbringing in your life.
Yeah, it was my it was my mom only, and we grew up in South Central. I had two older brothers, and her, she met this guy, and he moved us to Compton, our stepdad. Then they ended up having three other kids, and he was from the military, and he was just a deadbeat dad. He didn't care about us, her three sons, but he cared about his three sons, and he showed it. And he didn't take care of the home, very dysfunctional, running the street. It was just a very bad, poor, dysfunctional environment. And I, the number three son, I was the first one to graduate high school, and I kept telling myself it has to be more than this. Even though my mom would say, "Oh, your stepdad, he likes you more than the other ones, and you're smart, and you're gonna be this, and you're gonna be that," but I wasn't buying it. So I kept telling myself it has to be more than this, and was being bullied verbally in school throughout elementary, middle, and high school. Not physically, but just talking about our home, the kids, talking about the condition of our home, our yard, the stepdad, just all kind of things. He had wrecked cars in the front yard. It was just embarrassing, and I was embarrassed. And I remember at 12 or 13 years old, I'm saying it has to be more than this. because I didn't hang around the guys in the neighborhood because they were smoking weed and things like that. So I was a loner. And I kept telling myself it has to be more in this. I have to, number one, I have to get my education because that's going to be my way out. And I kept singing that song, He Got the Whole Wide World in His Hand, God. And that was a motivator. And the second motivator was because I didn't like my family at all. I would go to the Brady Bunch, all kind of family shows, and I would just zero in on these shows, and they would motivate me to, like, okay, once I leave this dysfunctional family, this is what I want in life. And I use other shows just to have peace, because my house was never peaceful. They were fighting. The stepdad, my mother would be cursing and fighting, had company over. It was just ghetto dysfunction to its highest. And I would close the door. I remember as a kid, I didn't want to hear it. It was like I was in the family, but I wasn't part of the family. I was different. They even said I was different. So, and I was saying, I can't wait till I turn 18. I can't take this anymore. And I wasn't really impressed with my two older brothers either because they didn't graduate. One of them was doing drugs, and the other one. So there was no one in my family that was a model to me. And like I said, I had to go to television and other kids' parents and things like that just to be motivated. So once I turned 18, my stepdad scammed me. I think I shared it with you, scammed me into putting my name on the home because he was losing it. And I was like, Mom, come on now. I'm just starting my life off. And she started, oh, you're going to let your mother be put on the street? She started crying. And you know, they bought the house in the 60s and they couldn't afford 130. And I said, well, if you can't afford $130 a month, how are you going to afford $552 a month? Oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. Because my stepdad worked for DWP, Department of Water and Power. But he was running the streets. He was chasing women. He wasn't taking care of business. So anyhow, they got me to put my name on a house when I was 18. And to make a long story short, it went to foreclosure again. And I said, that's it. I graduated high school. I took a trade. I went to, I got my certificate of nursing attendant 3, got a job at Augusta F. Hawkins in the psych department where I worked for 3 years. Then I started going to college, Valley College in North Hollywood, for psych tech. And I had to stay at every hotel by the airport because I needed to do my homework and I needed peace because my house was like a zoo. So, but at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm working on getting out the house, moving. And eventually, right before the post office called me, I moved out. And the mistake that I made because I wanted my family, I rushed into other relationships because I wanted to prove to myself or to them or whatever, I can have a normal family. So I got into another relationship where I have my kids with the woman I have my kids with, but I got into the relationship too early. And we end up divorcing after 7 years, I believe, because of her mom. My mother didn't want me to get married. My mother didn't want me to leave because they was putting all the stepfather used to shift all the responsibility to me. To go back a little bit, I used to, in my adolescent, from 13 to 17, I would take care of his 3 kids, babysit them. Then I couldn't go to the skate rink. I couldn't go play baseball, football. I couldn't do nothing on Saturdays. I had to babysit his kids.
Like you said, you really didn't get to have a childhood. You didn't get to go out and do what normal kids were doing, going out playing ball,
Exactly.
doing all that stuff because
Exactly.
they saw you as something that they could use to watch everybody while they were out doing their thing, because they knew
Exactly.
that, well, we've got one person that's going to be responsible for everybody, and that's you. So they prevented you from being able to enjoy the things that you should have been able to enjoy.
Exactly. And that's when I turned 16, they took me down to the DMV. I'm like, why are they so, sort of rush? I mean, getting my license at that time, whatever. And that's because he would leave one of the raggedy cars at home. And my mother got a job at a convalescent hospital because she had to, because he wasn't paying his bill. But I was still in high school, I remember at the time, and she would wake me up at 7 o'clock in the morning or whatever and say, you got to take me to work. And I have to be at high school, and I had to drive her to work in one of his beat up Mustangs. And because he wasn't home. And so he took, but I was really mad at her because she allowed him to put me in that position. And she also put me in that position because she was like, so they both put me in that position. And that's why I wanted to get out. And I want to get out and I want to leave. And I didn't want to look back. And she's crying, "Oh, I don't want you to leave." Well, I'm going to leave because I didn't have an
Right.
adolescent life.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah,
when,
and I was going to say, it takes a lot. When you were talking about, just going back real quick, when you were talking about you would go watch these shows that had a family in them,
right,
where you could sit there and imagine what it would be like to be in that kind of a family environment. And then, so one, I think it says a lot about you at a young age that you were determined not to be in the same kind
exactly.
of a family dynamic down the road. But yet, at the same time, you also made your mind up that at 18, you're going to be out of the house. You're going to get married because not going to have this family. But that's not exactly everything that happened. I mean, it still took a while before you could get past that point.
Exactly, because there were, my mother, I think I told you that when he'd be gone for like 3 or 4 days, and she's mad, and he'll come home and said, "Okay, get yourself along with his 3 kids, and we're going to Vegas. Leave them
Hmm.
other 3 there." I remember I was 14 years old, I didn't have nothing to eat. I'm like, she said, "Oh, okay, some cold cuts," and she's gone, and they be gone for 3 days. And I
So
mean,
it
she
was
loved
just
the guy,
you
but
and two other kids.
yeah, me and my other brother that's 2 years older than me, and my oldest brother had moved out by then. But it used to be just the 2 of us. And I was 14, he was 16. And she be gone. She be gone. They gone with his 3 kids and they gone to Vegas. And she really didn't care. And so I remember one time when I was a teenager, I was just like, you know what? I'm drained. I'm going out to with my friends. We're going to the park. And here comes the little daughter. Mama said, "Get home now." It's like I had no freedom.
Hmm.
And so at 18, 19, I was ready to get out of there. I was pushing myself because I was the first one to graduate high school. I was the first one to go to college. And I was like, and they knew I was different. They knew I was different. They knew I was no nonsense type of person. But they used me. They didn't go to my other brothers. They used me to put my name on the home. And they said, let's accelerate his salary where he worked at Augusta. Let's say he's make, I don't know, him and a bogus broker put a higher amount on my salary just so I can qualify for the house so they can quick deed it over. It was just scamming.
Hmm.
And but like I said, when through foreclosure, when I was ready to get my home, my mother, I said, okay, I have to fill out these letters saying what happened. And she didn't want to sign it. So it took me a while to get it off my record, those
Wow.
foreclosures. Yeah.
So
So
so you've gone through college, you go through a 7-year marriage, that doesn't work. At
right.
what point do you get this job with the Postal Service? Because I mean, people say, well, I'm going to go work for the Postal Service. That's good career job. Tell us about how you came into that job, and some of the issues, I know you shared it with me, but I want to make sure the audience understands some of the issues you encountered just trying to do your job.
Yeah, so after I left the psych department, um, and right before I got married, I joined the Postal Service in 1985 at the age of 22. And well, some of the same things I was experiencing at home were some of the same things that were going on at the Postal Service in Compton, but a little bit worse because I mean, these people, before I even get to the office when I was supervising, I, even though I lived in Compton, I was isolated in the LA County part of Compton where we stayed. I didn't never walk the streets or associate with, I didn't know no parts of the other parts of Compton. But when I started delivering mail, they took me into an environment. I had to start it off in Willowbrook, and it was the worst place, worse than Beirut, Iran, Iraq. There was a war zone. There was homicides. There were people stealing, people cursing you out, people taking the mail, people. It was a nightmare. And I was saying to myself, what did I just sign up for? Because when I left the psych department, I thought that, it was stressful and everything else, but the post office was at least 3 or 4 times stressful than the psych department.
Well,
Because,
and I was going to
go
say, it's
ahead.
pretty amazing that, some of the stuff that you described, you think, post office, I mean, you're just delivering mail. It's, you're just doing your job, but not having to think literally of the things that you're talking about that happened and that you experienced just to deliver the mail.
Exactly. In the delivering the mail, really was the last thought of putting the mail in the box. Your first thought was surviving. And you get the drug dealers out there shooting dice on the porch, blocking the mailbox. You can't even step over them. You get people running down the street with guns. Uh, it was like you thinking everybody's at work on a Monday at 11 a.m. and they're at home. It's like a holiday in this area. Nobody had mailboxes. Everybody would put up sugar boxes or some kind of box and write U.S. mail on it, and they want you to put your mail in that box. Nobody had their numbers on their home. The post office didn't want us to look at the curve because they said that's not the appropriate way. But these people had no mail numbers on their homes. It was just a mess, and everyone had pit bulls. They run loose. Everyone had roosters. They run loose. Everyone had uh, it, it was just a nightmare. So it came to the point where I said, look, I had to really make adjustments in my head. And I told the supervisor, all these people getting shot. I'm looking at yellow tape every time next day, the police said we can't go down the street. So I said, look, I need to get out the office early, run my route. I'm gonna run through lunch, I'm gonna run through the breaks. Let me take my lunch in a controlled environment, which is this office, in the break room. This is where I choose to take my lunch. I don't want to take it sitting in the truck on the street because you're gonna get shot sitting in your truck. Or they're gonna try to rob you. And they agreed. They said, as long as I said, look, I'm gonna run through my route. I might finish about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, which I was supposed to finish at 4. That's your 8 hours, 4 o'clock. Let me come back into the office, take my lunch, and that's it. And that's the real life of Karen Mill in Compton. Part 1. Part 2 is because I was running my routes, I was finishing early, but some of the customers happy, management was happy, whatever. But I was doing it to survive. Uh, they said, "Okay, we're gonna give you a promotion of an acting supervisor." Okay, so I did that, and then and the stress went even higher because that's when I had to find out about some of these employees doing all this crooked stuff, stealing, jumping through people's windows at home, messing with these married women, and uh, stealing mail, going swimming in the summer at the apartment pools. They should taking their gear, they postal uniforms off and just going swimming. Why?
Wow.
Well, they say it's hot. They just said it's hot. So, and the postmaster, he's going with, which is my boss. He's telling me, "Oh, don't let that girl go out today. Wait, just use overtime." I'm like, why? Why can't she go out? Well, he got lunch with her. He gonna have lunch. These are
Mm.
married postmasters going out with the carriers. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is worse. And it was really the thing about when I carried mail, I controlled my whole thing, my whole like, okay, I'm gonna go in here, take my lunch, and I'm going home. But when you supervise, you're dealing with 40 behaviors, the carriers, the postmasters, everybody, all this trickery stuff. And that was stressful. So I think that had a lot to do with my impatience and of course, my wife that I was married to, she was, her and her mother was taking my kids every weekend without my knowledge and taking them to Fontana. And I had to work on Saturdays, and she got mad because I didn't want to go to Fontana on Saturdays. And it just didn't work out, and plus I
Well,
had that stress along with that stress, and we
right,
just
right.
decided. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So, and I think we talked about it a little bit, but you're going through this, and I don't think anybody thinks that, as you mentioned, literally all you're trying to do is serve the mail, and you're literally trying to survive
Exactly.
serving the mail. Let me ask, at what point, or did you ever ask yourself, okay, this isn't for me. I need to go somewhere else. I need to do something different. Did that thought ever cross your mind while you're going through all of this?
Yes, I tried to transfer out of Bellflower, and when you try to transfer, you write a letter of intent. But the post office, I don't know if you can call it blackball, they stopped it. They stopped it, and they
Mm,
lied. They lied and said, "Well, no, you don't want this employee." At that time, they were promoting me to be an acting supervisor, so my record was good, but they stopped it. And I think I only been with the service for about 5 or 6 years at the time. I'm not sure, but they stopped it. I mean, it was just games. It was a lot of games. And they stopped me from going to Bellflower, and that was the last time I even thought about moving.
wow.
So, um, so I hung in there. I said my prayers before I go in the office, and uh, the good news was they said, okay, Santa Monica, Redondo Beach, they need help, blah, blah, blah. And I was quick to say, okay, I'm gone, because I wanted out of Compton.
Mhm.
Come to find out that the culture at the other post office, the city might be better. Ooh, Santa Monica, you by the water, or Redondo Beach, you by the water. But the culture remains the same because when I went to Redondo Beach, people stealing mail, going in the vault, stealing money. They got mail in the truck overnight sitting there. The employees and the other supervisors telling the carriers, don't come to work tomorrow because he gonna need some help. Just games. It's a cultural mess throughout the whole system of the Postal Service.
Well, that is just crazy. I think you hear stories, obviously, of, every once in a while a story pops up that something's happening with the mail, but you don't. Obviously, you've been inside of it, so you've seen the inside of how it works. So you see things obviously that the normal public doesn't see. But so you go on, you stay with the post office, and you end up retiring after how many years?
34 years. But
34
the only
years all in
reason, but
Compton.
the only reason why I survived that long is because I was able to go to different stations for long periods of time for 1 year, uh, 2 years. Now there were some good stations like Southgate was a good station and Bell Garden. So I ended up staying there as long as I could to just take a breath away from Compton. And so I did that for 19 years, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then I was eligible to retire when I turned 55. Of course, they didn't want me to retire, and said, no, I can't do this because the postmasters that they hire, they're all crooked. You can't get, no, everyone walks through the doors crooked. You can't get a decent person. And uh, he would get jealous of me because I'm running a unit in Compton with 40 carriers. And I get there, my clock in time is at 6 o'clock. I get there at 4 o'clock in the morning, ahead of all the carriers. But I'm doing all my work, getting their trucks ready, cleaning the floor, getting my desk ready, getting their desks ready, check the sick calls, making sure I'm on top of the sick calls and all that stuff. And this postmaster, I never forget, get jealous of me. Why everybody like you? Why everybody come to work when you're here? When you're on vacation or when you're not here, they call in. Well, I have nothing to do with that. Maybe that's your relief supervisor that takes over when I'm not here because they would tell me they have problems with her. But that's not my fault. Why you bringing me in the office telling me about something I can't control? When you're not here, everybody calling sick. I'm not telling them to call in sick. It's just they see how I carried mail and they treat me with respect, and I treat them with respect, and I know what I'm talking about on certain things. But just because this other particular supervisor would, she had a thing, she never carried mail, but she would like to go to the postmaster and say, "Ooh, I wrote up 5 people today. Oh, I wrote up this, I wrote up that." And another thing with the postmasters, when they don't like an employee, they tell you to write them up anyway. They don't have nothing on them, but I want you to write them up anyway. I didn't like that.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So you retire from the post office. So kind of bring everybody back up to speed. Rose, you've gone through this traumatic experience of your mother and your father. They're in an abusive relationship. You go on you develop this awareness that you need to stand up for yourself and take some control. You get into relationships that are abusive relationships. You're faced with this dilemma of, I mean, I can't even fathom that your son's placed behind your vehicle and you're given this ultimatum about going to work or running him over. And then AJ, all you're trying to do is you're trying to survive life. You don't get to have much of an adolescence growing up. You don't get to experience the same joys that most kids get to enjoy. You decide that you want to you're going to get out of the house at 18. You're going to get married. That doesn't work. You go to the Postal Service, which, it's a career job. Everything's supposed to be great. It's not always what it seems on the outside. Right.
Right,
And,
right.
and so here we have individual lives. Both of you have gone through traumatic experiences in your life. And now at what point does Rose and AJ come together?
So we met online through a dating site, Christian Mingle. And I had just opened up an account. It was maybe 2, 3 weeks in. And I was telling my sister, I'm like, you know what? I'm getting ready to give up because I don't think there's anybody out there, for me in particular. And I do remember I was going to church, a Christian church, by the house where I was staying in my apartment by myself. I actually treated myself for the first time. It was on the second story, but it had a washer and dryer. Never had a washer and dryer inside my apartment or anywhere I lived. I always had to go to the laundry room or the laundromat. So I said, I'm going to treat myself to this. It was only like an extra $35 extra a month rent. So I finally did that for myself. And I remember telling God, I got like real upset and stuff. And I told him, I thought you said that when you're single, you're not meant to be single, something like that. I'm like, when are you going to bring my husband? Blah, 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 this and that. And one afternoon, I checked my messages on the single site, and I noticed that this character next to me had peeked in and looked at my profile, but didn't leave me a message. So the sassy person that I am, I saw his profile and I saw that he was going to a Christian church at Seal Beach, was it?
Yeah, Philippines.
Seal Beach. And I had gone to that church a few times with a group of friends, and then I said, okay, so I guess he is a real Christian, because sometimes people say they're Christians, but they're not. Their actions will speak for them. So I sent him a message, and then I said, I thought it was rude that you stopped by to view my profile, but didn't even bother to say hi. And he was online. He immediately sent me a message. He says, call me, with his phone number. I started laughing. I called him. And since then, we were on the phone for like 4 hours. He asked me out because he likes to dance. We went out that same day. We agreed to wear blue. There were only 2 pictures on his profile. All I knew was that he was male, bald, and African American, but I did not know what he looked like. And so we meet at where
The
was it?
Foxfire.
Yeah, off the 91. And I was in shock on how handsome he is, because I didn't know what he really looked like. And he had this smile that just,
Yeah.
it was great. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was the best.
AJ,
It was the best time of my life because, like I said, I was going to church, she was going to church, and I was part of a men's group with Cottonwood, and I was growing and growing and growing because, and I didn't tell you I didn't know what love was. I didn't know how to recognize love. I didn't know how to love or receive love because of my parents. And because they never showed me what love was. And then when I met her, I was so happy. And we met. I had 5 years left at the post office, so she did kind of see what I was going through. I was still working, but I had 5 years left. But I was happy, and because before I met her, I just had asked. I got on my knees, asked God to just bring that special person to my life. And that's exactly what he did. And I remember meeting her, and I was so happy. Probably the happiest day of my life. I was 50 years old, so the happiest day of my life. And and that's where it started. And we have grown from there. And like I said, all I wanted was a normal family, a normal wife.
Yeah.
That's all I ever wanted. But I
it's
had to go through an obstacle course to get it, you know.
right. Really, it's like,
So
is that really too much to ask for, right?
exactly.
But it's interesting, Rose, how you in your mind you're having this, you're talking to God and say, well, I thought something about not being single, and here's AJ getting on his knees, going, what do I got to do? And then all of a sudden, boom,
Mhm.
there you are, the two of you together. Now you
Yeah.
guys shared something that I think was really interesting in church, and if I've got this wrong, please correct me. But you guys are going to the same church, correct?
Right. After we started dating, I invited him to go with me to the church I was going to, Crossroads
Yeah.
in Corona. Hmm.
All right. And what happened there? There's something interesting that happens at this church.
Yeah. So, prior to meeting him, I had a dream that my whole family, we were all, because I was raised Catholic, we were all in this Catholic church, and that my future husband was going to get baptized. That was my dream. But then as we were dating and we went to Crossroads, um, I had, previous to that a little bit, I kind of had a calling of being baptized again, because I was baptized as an infant. And then when the pastor said, we're open for baptisms, and you can sign up, this and that, and I immediately felt the urge or the need to get baptized, and I told him about it, and he encouraged me. So we went and signed up, and then they told us that anybody can baptize you. And that's when he volunteered. And we were 3 months in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, barely dating, like
Yeah.
2 to 3 months in, because I got baptized in January, I think.
So that
Yeah.
was that. I was
Yeah.
gonna say
That's
that's
not.
something that doesn't happen very. I mean, I've never heard of you know, you getting baptized and you get to choose, which is great.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
fact that it
Right.
was you
Yeah.
two, you
Yeah.
two that were, that in itself is an amazing story.
Crossroads is a huge church, over 2,000 people, and Pastor Chuck, such a great man,
Mhm.
and they had us on they baptized when they baptized people, what you call it, big screen TV?
Yeah, they have a big
Yeah,
Jumbotron.
Jumbotron where everybody could see it.
Mhm.
And of course he gave me the words to say. There's certain words I had to say before I placed it in the water.
Mhm.
And in those marrying this woman and baptizing her are the two most important things in my life that I ever did. Yeah.
Wow,
But
that's
it was
amazing.
something special. Yeah.
So you two are together. How long you been married now?
It's gonna be 10
10
years.
years.
February.
I was just checking. There's a little test there to see you guys come up with the right answers or the same
Oh,
answer. So-
And we renewed our vows on the ship we just got back from on our cruise. Yeah.
All right. So what is life like today? I mean, you like I mentioned, you've both had different backgrounds, traumatic
Mhm.
backgrounds. You've gone through a lot. You've come together to now share your lives together. If I remember correctly, AJ, you're working on something screenwrite, right? Or a screenwriter. You want to tell
Yeah,
us about that real
screenplay.
quick?
Well, the screenplay is basically of what I just shared with you about, but only the post office. And it's called, the title is called The Running Postman. How I had to run to sort of survive. And that's the title of the screenplay, The Running Postman in Compton, where I had to run to survive. But by me running and saving time and the managers liking how I finished early and did all those things, they promoted me to an active supervisor. And
With the promise of becoming a supervisor, but that never.
with the promise of me becoming a permanent supervisor,
Yeah.
which that never happened.
Mhm.
But you know, it talks about the ins and outs of the Postal Service and what you have to accomplish. And I made sure I told people, just like I used to think that, the post office was, people think it's Mayberry, but it's not Mayberry. It's rough, it's tough, and there's a lot of things I talk about how on the 1st and 15th some carriers used to have people lined up outside of their truck way down the street. And instead of delivering the mail, he was giving them their checks, but everyone was handing him $5.
Wow,
In other words,
that's
he had his
amazing.
own.
That's
He had,
crazy.
he had his own. He
Yeah,
had his own.
yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
crazy. So
Making some money on the side, a little bit going on.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Rose? I know you've been busy. You've got your own business. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I do photography, all occasion photography, and that's what I plan on doing when I completely retire from my full-time job. With all this mess that I was going through, even when my kids were younger, I did get a job at Kaiser, and I've been working there for 29 years now. And I'll never forget, I was visiting for an ultrasound. This was before I had my second son. And I'm, knitting some little stuff and I'm waiting and I'm looking around. And I said, God, I would really like to work here. Year and a half later, I'm working there. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. So, as we get ready to wrap things up, um, maybe if you want to answer these individually, you want to answer them together. But for those who have gone through, Rose, for similar circumstances that have experienced life in an abusive relationship, whether that be in their parents or that themselves that they've gone through with, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is in that position right now?
Um, I would tell them to protect their little kid themselves. See themselves as that little child that they once were and how no one ever protected them. It's your job to protect yourself. It's your job to protect that little child in you and to never give up. Never give up because there's a reason why you're going through this. And it might sound crazy, but God has a plan for everyone. And I truly believe that if you put your faith in him, he's going to see you through it. He's going to get you into positions where you can actually testify your testimony to other people Because that's what I do now. Almost every day at work, I have someone coming in with something. And due to my experiences, I'm able to pull some of that knowledge, and they actually listen to me and they realize, you know what, that makes a lot of sense, that kind of thing. But you kind of have to go through the trenches in order for you to be sincere when you share these stories with other people, so they understand that you're coming from a genuine place. You actually experience that. And I would just say, just don't give up. You can't give
All
up.
right. And AJ, for you, for maybe somebody out there, somebody who's just coming up in life, maybe they're in their teen years, maybe they're experiencing the same type of environment that you grew up in, but yet they know it's not right for them. They know that's not where they want to be in life. Yet they have all these external factors that are playing into their lives. What kind of words of wisdom would you give to somebody who is also facing that same type of situation?
I would tell them to keep your vision and don't stray away or deviate from your vision. Um, if you fall down, get up. And with the help of, but it has to be with the help of God. And you have to be a praying person and pray in your own words, but keep the vision that you have, because you have that vision, it can be attained because you had that vision and God put that in your head for a reason. So you pray for it, you keep it, and you're going to go through obstacles. You're going to go through trials and tribulations, but maintain that vision because that vision is you. And God created you with that vision. So you maintain it by prayer and by keeping it. And don't let anyone stop you from having that vision of your dreams.
All right. And the last question, again, maybe both of you can answer this, is now that you two are together, you found your happiness after years of trials and ups and downs. For you and to somebody out there that's listening right now, what do you think is the key now? They may feel like they just given up, finding that right person. It's just a tough world out there. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's just getting into a new relationship or how to deal with their current relationship?
You go ahead.
Okay.
Keep going first.
No. My advice is the person get on their knees and ask God to bring that special person. And when you get that person, it's so important for you to be yourself and for that person to be themselves. And then you come together and you put God first. And as a man, your happiness is to support your significant other, is you want her to just be happy by being herself in everything that she wishes for. You want to support her, and probably the same way with her
Yep.
to her husband.
Yep.
You guys have to support one another. You want the best for one another, but you have to include God into the relationship so He can keep you guys two becoming one. And you join at the hips and you live in harmony together and you improve each and every day. And my wife and I, we start off, we read the Bible and pray every morning together. And you just stay connected. You stay connected with God, then He connects you together. Because I asked God to bring me this woman, and I'm not going to stray. And I am thankful and I am blessed. And I have a responsibility and I'm going to be accountable. But it's not just being responsible, accountable. I'm happy to be those things with this woman. So it's don't let the world bring you somebody because she looks pretty on the outside or they got money, all those worldly things or those materialistic things. Go for the heart. And when you go from the heart, God's going to bring you someone that has a good internal about themselves.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, Rose and AJ, I want to thank you both very much for joining me. Thank you both for, one, sharing your individual stories with our audience, and two, for sharing how you came together as well. I want to thank you both very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having us and letting us share our story.
All right. And for those of you out there, we want to remind you that just like Rose and AJ, you too can rise, inspire, and overcome. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button on this, and you too can be a part of our hashtag Real Movement. I'm Deston Rogers. Join us again next time for another edition of Eagle Freedom Presents.
To learn more about our mission and become a part of hashtag Real Movement, visit eaglefreedompresents.com. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a beacon of hope. If you know someone who has an amazing story of overcoming, send us an email to eaglefreedompresents@gmail.com. And remember our mantra, rise, inspire, overcome. Podcast distribution for Eagle Freedom Presents provided by Podetize. Visit podetize.com for all your podcast needs.